Is Habistax any good? In this video, we're going to find out. Let's get into it. If you are into aquascaping, you would have seen Habistax pop up on your For You page numerous times in the past year, but it has finally been released to the public. And luckily enough, one of my friends and friends of the shop, Brendan, managed to get hold of one for me. So I wanted to do a video, unsponsored. We traded the equivalent amount of money for this, for some plants and some substrate, so he could set up his very own Habistax. And I wanted to make an in-depth, detailed breakdown of everything you need to know before you spend a whopping £50 on a single Habistax tower. But if you haven't seen what Habistax is, it is a new way of aquascaping where it is a vertical tower that you plant into and apparently is really good for plant health. And since seeing them, I've been super curious about how they work. But they're only available online. They're not stocking in retail shops right now. And I would really like to if they're any good. Realistically, I think it's worthwhile somebody making a video over the course of a couple of weeks, seeing how plants do in a Habistax, in an aquarium environment, and letting you guys at home know if it's worth it or not. For me, for Habistax to be worth it, I'm going to break it down into 3 separate categories. How easy is it to set up and use? How good plant growth can I get without super expensive lighting? And does it look good? So those are the 3 categories that I will ultimately be rating Habistax on and figuring out if I think you guys at home should be dropping 50 quid for one of these things. But first things first, let's get it set up. Right, so first things first, the box is really nice, but these guys have a really simple setup video on there that is linked on their Vimeo, which is great. I have already watched the Habistax setup video, but I am just going to give myself a little bit of time to read through this little booklet and I'll report back what comes with. Right, so straight out of the box, you have to take the lid off and then apparently unlock and dismantle the Habistax as it comes. 3 outer chambers and a base. Okay, so this is the inner chamber, and this is what needs to be filled with a high nutrient substrate. I'm going to be going with this NutriBase by Colombo, mainly because I have some open from a aquascaping workshop that I was doing with some of my favorite customers the other day. So I am just going to fill this bad boy up. Just to say, Habistax do recommend that you use a funnel for this, but really, do I need it? Let's find out. Oh boy. Okay, so full transparency, do not use NutriBase by Colombo with the Habistax. It's too sandy. I think when they say use a high nutrient substrate, they mean an aqua soil. So I'm going to empty this off, clean it out, and then I'll get back to you guys in a minute. Okay, so I am back, and now having discovered that not all substrates are suitable for the Habistax, just because it has quite fine inner tubing, but not suitable for like sandy bases like NutriBase. So I know a lot of people love NutriBase online, I do too, but not suitable for a Habistax. So instead, I'm going to be going with an aquascape soil, which is pretty much the same as any scape soil on the market at the moment. They all have their own added benefits, but I'm a big fan of the scape soil from Awasa, so we'll go with that. Right, so now that's all done. Full disclosure, you're meant to have done this section next, but I don't see why it wouldn't all go well. So now I'm just going to go in and lock all of these planting chambers in place. And as you can tell from the substrate, oh dear, okay. That just snapped. You can change, yeah, reattaching the removable plant pockets. The plant pockets can be removed. Okay, so if you have some taller plants and you don't want to use all of these plant pockets, you can just not use them, which I'm an idiot. Let's get on with putting it all back together. Okay, so that's one. God damn, that's annoying. Okay, I get it. The plant pockets are removable, but the fact that they can only be reattached from inside, it seems, that's really quite frustrating. But they do seem to come out quite easy. So maybe when you're, maybe that's why, okay, that's one. So don't press down on the plant pockets, is what I'm gathering. That's two, and that's three. So that's our Habistax. That's how it's going to look. So now it's time to choose my planting. And in all fairness to Habistax, they do show off a selection of different plants that I think is almost a recommendation, although I'm sure with something like this, anything that needs like a decent nutrient layer and high lighting would be great. And they do suggest planting higher light plants towards the top. I've got a selection of plants in mind that I am going to show you guys now, and then tell you how easy it is to get them into the Habistax system. So I have my Habistax and I've got myself a selection of plants, and I wanted to give everything a go, whether that's some high lighting plants, some low lighting plants, and some super easy plants. On the box, Habistax use mainly things like Cryptocoryne, so I'm going to be using lots of Cryptocoryne. I'm also going to be using some harder to grow plants, but I'll talk through them as I go. Now, I think to start off with, I'm going to go with a plant that is probably one of the easiest plants on planet Earth to grow, and that's what's going to be going at the bottom of my Habistax, and that is Vallisneria rubra, which is this beautiful seaweedy stuff. It's one of my favorite, like easy to grow plants. It can grow anywhere. So if the Habistax can't grow this, then I'll be very, very surprised. But I'm thinking just if we place it somewhere down here, and that should be a start. Now, next up is this beautiful Anubias Barteri Barnana, and Habistax do say that they can still be used inside of their systems. They just shouldn't be placed too deeply inside, because obviously their rhizomes will rot if they are placed in gravel. So if I just place that on top like that, that should work quite nicely. Next up, I've got this absolutely stunning Cryptocoryne Kesselman, which is a larger species of crypt. So again, I think it should probably go nearer the bottom. Also super easy to grow stem plant, not a stem, strictly a stem plant, but super, super easy to grow. So again, if the Habistax can't be growing this, then I don't know what it can grow, but I'm super excited to see what it all comes out like. Obviously, using tweezers might be a good idea, but it is relatively easy going so far. I've not had any issues, and I'm kind of enjoying the whole process, honestly. This is something that I wanted to give a go. It is a Aponogetum crispus, and I think, yeah, I thought I was going to run into this issue. I don't think Aponogetum are suitable for Habistax. So because you can't actually fit the bulb in. Moving up a bit, again, a bit more of that Cryptocoryne. I think maybe if we, hey, let's go with the Hugo Cashme idea, where if there is a plant on one side, it has to be on the other. So let's match that maybe just up here in this pocket and see how we get on. Kind of looks cool. Then we've also got this absolutely beautiful, more diminutive Cryptocoryne species of Cryptocoryne parva. It's a little bit more dinky, so I'm thinking maybe we'll place that down here, and I might just do a small ring of these crypts because, hey, I think Cryptocoryne is one of the best species of plants on the market. But don't worry, we're not just going to be doing crypt and super easy to grow plants. I know people want to know how well the Habistax actually grows things. But I think maybe if we, instead of doing some bundles, we place some smaller plantlings and we'll be able to see how they actually get on. Yeah, I'm thinking that's looking, let's split this one a little bit, and then we'll be able to take a look at what we're working with so far. I've got to say, this is videography's worst nightmare, just trying to get these in, because it's like you've got all these different angles and vertical ways of creating it, and you just can't figure out which way is going to be which. But I've also got this absolutely stunning type of Echinodorus called Echinodorus purpurea, which is one of the most diminutive species of Echinodorus plant. Super easy to grow. Again, I know I'm gonna be moving on to some of the harder to grow species, but I think maybe this will look really nice going in the side. And then if I just thread this root back into the holes, that should do nicely. And I'm gonna poke all these roots back in as I go. But I've also got another purpurea. So I think for the sake of symmetry, we are going to, if we've got a purpurea there, and this is probably going to be the front, if we go in there with that. And I'm finding that if you just pinch the roots and go down, this is probably the easiest planting that I've ever had. I'll be honest, in terms of ease of use so far, 10 out of 10, cannot recommend enough. This is just a type of Cryptocoryne that I got from my house tank because I didn't want to just be using up a load of the shop plants. So I'm just going to tuck this in next to the Castleman and we'll see how mixing up some crypt species goes, I guess. I will say, like, the one thing is I'm worried about the plants going in too deep. So for things like crypt, you don't really want them to be crushed by the gravel that's going to go in. So I'm honestly getting a bit concerned at how it's going to go. But for the time being, it's looking kind of cool. Next up, a slightly harder to grow species. We've got some Rotala indica. I know, again, not the hardest plant in the world to grow, but we aren't putting it into a super high light tank. I don't want to just be like, yeah, it didn't work. Of course it didn't work. You were using like Altananthera cardinalis mini super red, when realistically you should have been using things like Valis and Rotala. So this is what we're going to be going with. And these are the eco bunches from Aquafleur. And I really love using eco bunches. They are just like a nice, cheaper alternative to planting. And I think I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, like kind of interact with the purpurea a bit. Maybe if I come round here with one more of the Rotala species, because this is starting to look pretty full up and there are a few more species that I do want to get in here. I guess if I go in here, that's going to be good. Yeah, that's looking fancy. Now there's a few species that do prefer very high light, like things like my Chrysanthemum Monte Carlo, and I have a theory that this is going to be the absolute best way to grow my chrysanthemum, where you can literally have it as high and tight to the light as you physically want. So I'm going to put that right up at the top. And then again, another species that typically people either have a really good time with because they have high light and usually CO2 injection. And I think something like this, because usually if it's Eleocharis acicularis or dwarf hairgrass, I think if you stick that in the top here, it's going to have a better time than you've really ever experienced with it, just because it is going to be that much higher towards the light. And that is what Habistax recommend. And then finally, I've got one of my favorite plants, which is Hydrocotyl tripetata. And again, it's a plant that is super easy to grow, but does prefer high lighting. So I'm thinking if I just stick it in the back and it will climb up towards the surface. So I'm thinking if I put it in maybe this one right at the top, it's going to do really, really well. And then if I match that on this one as well, and then they can kind of like hang down and then maybe grow towards the surface. We'll see. We'll see. I'll show you guys which tank they're going in a little bit. I might put some better lighting in if these plants will struggle. But for the time being, that's where we're at. And then I did want to add in a couple of more epiphytes, but I'm running out of space. So I'm thinking maybe this Anubias Petty Nana. No, this is just Anubias Nana. So if I go in there with that, and hopefully just keep the rhizome outside so we don't get any rot with that. And then I do have one more little species of plant that I did just want to use. And this is a Bucephalanga pygmy bouquet calam. And I know it seems maybe a bit of a waste to be using this in a Habistax. In all honesty, I think if these are just dotted around the actual place itself, maybe they'll do really well, maybe they won't. But I actually haven't got an aquascape in mind for these beautiful, beautiful little Bucephalanga species. So I'm going to just place them around to kind of do the finishing touches on the front of this aquascape. And then I'll show you guys exactly what we're looking like plant-wise. Now, just for the sake of transparency, I will say that Habistax recommend that you attach your epiphytes with these here elastic bands. I personally aren't going to. I don't think that they are at too much risk of rotting, but I am just going to fill this up with gravel now and we'll see how we get on. Habistax recommend using funnel, and I'm going to let you know how much I actually agree with them. Oh God, oh dear. Holy crap. I've just got to say, you probably just heard my actual reaction to that. That's nuts. That's not how I thought it would be at all. Everything's kind of just perfectly planted. That's awesome. That's so cool. That's like the easiest thing in the world. There's some little bits where I'm like, yeah, I'm probably going to have to just shove some gravel in top, but holy crap, it works. It works. The Habistax works. It fills. That's awesome. That is amazing. Next steps, I guess. I'll be honest, it was a little bit messy, but I thought that was going to be an absolute disaster. And it just works. It actually works. It actually fills. And the plants are secure, pretty much. That's wicked. The epiphytes are held in place. That's really cool. I'm chuffed with that. Sorry, I'm absolutely chuffed. That's wicked. So now, before any of my things dry out, they are being misted regularly. I just place my cap. Oh dear. What have I done? And that just sits like that. And then you lock it in place like that. And then I cap it like this. And that's it. Very cool. It then recommends that I fill up the base of the Habistax without absolutely killing my Valis. Oh dear. For additional weight and ballast. Oh boy, that's a mess. Now, full transparency, Habistax recommend that you put the Habistax in an empty aquarium and then fill it. It's meant to be an aquascaping thing. But this angel tank looks bare and empty, and I really want to be able to see it every single day, and I spend a lot of time looking at these angelfish. So this is where the Habistax is going to go, and I'm going to try and really gently place it into it. Jesus. Oh, that's tight. I did not think this through. Epiphyte down, epiphyte down. Okay. I think that's how it's going to be. Let's see how it goes. Okay, well, as you can see, although I completely misjudged how tall the ceiling was in here, the Habistax is now sat inside of the angel tank. And I think it looks really cool. But the question is, will it grow over the course of the next few weeks with the fish that Habistax have on the box? Let's find out, because if there's ever a time to find out if it's going to work or not, this is the tank for it, full of angelfish and Corydoras. So I'll catch you guys in a few weeks to see how we get on. So it's been a few weeks since I first set up the Habistax, and I initially said that I was going to rate it on 3 separate parts: the ease of setup and use, how effective was the plant growth itself, and aesthetically how it looks. And setting up the Habistax was an incredibly easy process. Aside from a couple of issues with trying to get the movable plant holders to stay in place, they did come out a couple of times, I didn't really have any issues whatsoever. When actually filling it with gravel, I was really impressed at how easily the plants managed to stay in place. Also, the setup manual was really in depth. It really just gives you every step-by-step piece that you need to know. I wish they had given it a bit more detail on how to attach the epiphytes using the rubber bands that they provided, but realistically, that's nitpicky, and it's pretty easy to figure out once you go through that. I decided not to use the rubber bands in the end because I thought it would take away from the aesthetic, and it did just hold the epiphytes in place by the roots, which goes to show how well the actual gravel filling system works. I wish they did have a more in-depth list about what plants are recommended for the Habistax system itself, as I found that there is a definite hierarchy in which plants you should be using in the Habistax system for the absolute best growth. So overall, ease of use, really, really easy to use system. Now, with plant growth, the actual lighting that I used in this tank is not the best plant lighting in the world. I didn't want to be using something like a Cleveland 3.0 or even a Superfish Scaper light for this kind of test, just because I think for the type of people who are going to be wanting to use Habistax, which I'll get into a little bit later, they're not going to be the kind of person that's going to be using high-tech lighting and CO2 injection. It's just not that kind of product. So this tank literally has really basic AliExpress aquarium lighting, which is what I think is representative of a lot of starter aquariums for most people, and what a lot of people are going to be buying if they're going for a really easy to use aquarium setup. So that is the preface for this. In terms of plant growth, Cryptocorynes do insanely well in the Habistax system. I'm actually ridiculously impressed at how well they do. I didn't experience any sort of crypt melt when I put them into the system. Same with things like Vallisneria, and also your epiphytes do really, really well with them. That's why I was saying earlier on, I think it would be really beneficial if they had just in the user manual what planting they want to recommend to people. Because for me personally, I would have said you should go largely just for Cryptocoryne species, epiphytes like Anubias and Java Fern, and also the Amazon sword species did really, really well. Now, there are some caveats to how well plants grow in the system. The Rotala rotundifolia bloody red didn't do quite as well as I would have expected, particularly being planted up towards the lighting system. That could be to do with trying to adapt to an aquarium setting when they've obviously been grown emerged. And also it didn't help that the angels that I have in this tank were really nipping at them. And they did get some decent growth at the surface. However, I do not think that the Habistax system is built for stem planting. If one of the joys of keeping stem planting, for me at least, is that you can cut them down and propagate them. That's just not something that I realistically see myself or anyone else doing in the Habistax system. It is just that little bit too fiddly to cut down your stem planting and replant them. However, like I said, heavy stem feeders like your Cryptocoryne, like your Amazon swords, Valis, all of those kinds of species, you're not going to be propagating them as much. Valis in particular, you're just going to be cutting the tops off as they get too tall. And the one that did well, that wasn't eaten by angelfish, is really looking quite healthy, and it's going to be a mainstay in this Habistax system. Also, the caveat with stem planting, things like the Hydrocotyl tripetata really loved being at the surface. Realistically, again, not one of those species that is too difficult just to poke back into place and keep it in a more condensed form. The Eleocharis acicularis, dwarf hairgrass, it grew fine. Again, it needed some adaptation from being grown merged into aquarium, but nothing impressive, nothing to write home about. Looking back on it, I don't think that like foreground planting is the way to go with the Habistax system. So in terms of plant growth overall, great for things like epiphytes, great for things like Cryptocoryne, great for some heavy root feeding systems, which is getting some amazing growth, and even some stem plants do really well. And with a few tweaks with the overall design, maybe some wider planting pockets, it could be a real powerhouse for plant growers who just want to have a constant supply of stem planting that they can put into their other aquariums. But I think that's a little bit too niche to even write home about. So overall, some pretty decent plant growth, but nothing that's going to change the industry as a whole. If you struggle with growing plants in the aquarium you have right now, this isn't going to be the be-all, end-all solution for getting some really impressive plant growth. You will get some really nice growth from your crypts and heavy root feeders, but it's not going to be the solution to keeping red stem planting without highlighting and CO2. And finally, aesthetically, I think that the Habistax looks quite cool. I really like the black sleekness to the product itself, and it has that kind of novelty, cool look to it. But talking to my girlfriend, she was trying to figure out with me who the Habistax is actually for, which I think, talking about its aesthetics, leads into nicely. For me personally, someone who enjoys aquascaping, I don't think the Habistax is built for me. And after a lot of discussion and trying to figure this out, we landed on it's for the absolute beginner aquarium keeper who wants to get into aquarium planting. This is such a great system for beginner fish keepers to dip their toes into a planted nature aquarium without having to invest into a huge amount of aqua soil and having to worry about aquascaping. It is a really, really simple system that just lowers the barrier for entry for anyone who wants to invest in aquarium plants. It's really great for parents whose kids want an aquarium. The parents understand that plants are going to aid in the health of an aquarium, but they don't want to really have to bother with aquascaping. This is a great alternative for that. And honestly, it's going to look better than having SpongeBob figurines in the base of your aquarium. So it's great for that as well. And also, it's ideal for people like breeders who want that touch of greenery, places for their fish to hide and have that little bit of nature to help them spawn, but they still need that bare base so that they can control all of the variables inside of their aquarium. The Habistax system is absolutely perfect for that. So it's a niche product, but it's one hell of a niche. That being said, And this isn't for me. I was talking to, again, my girlfriend, who is a layman with all of this kind of thing. She was saying how the black's fine, but she would love for in future, if Habistax were ever going to bring out different models of the Habistax system, that she would love something like a woodland print on the actual body itself, or something like a marble or any kind of color. For me, I like the sleekness of the black, and I like the way it looks. So in conclusion, aesthetically, the Habistax looks great if that's what you're into, but I don't think it's for aquascapers. If you were thinking about getting one of these just because you think they look cool and like the way they look, they do look like they are on the box, but you're not going to be able to incorporate it into an aquascape, I don't think. But as I was saying, I think there is a huge market for beginner fish keepers, fish breeders, and anyone who just wants a really simple planted setup without the hassle of having to go through an aquascape. Additionally, it is worth saying that the parameters in this tank have been a lot more stable with the Habistax in it. I think being able to have that aqua soil without having to spread it out over the bottom and it not really adding nitrates to the water, it's really been good for the angels that are in here. So I do think that is worth mentioning. So in conclusion, I think that the Habistax system is a great product for its specific niche. It has an incredibly low barrier to entry for non-hobbyists and beginner fish keepers who want a entry point to natural looking planted aquariums without having to invest into aquascaping overall. Although its design isn't for everyone, I think it really does deliver on its overall promise of plant growth for specifically heavy root feeding plants. And realistically, I think that the minor issues with the plant holders being a bit finicky and some less than ideal growth from stem planting, it's outweighed by the impressive plant growth that I got from the Cryptocorynes and overall how nice it looks and how easy it is to use in a basic aquarium setup. So do I think that the Habistax system is worth it? If you're new to this hobby, you don't really care about aquascaping, and you want to just add some greenery and beauty to your aquarium, then yes, I think it absolutely is. And that's all from me here at Pond Life Aquatics. I will ask you guys a massive favor if you've made it this far into the video. The Practical Fish Keeping Readers Poll is open for 2025, and I will leave a link in the description. If you want to vote for us for any of the categories that are in the Practical Fish Keepers Readers Poll, it would be amazing if you could vote for us. But if not, I will see you in the next video where I put out weekly shop tours, or every other week at this point, and I've been trying to do more aquascaping, more species spotlight. But for now, that's all from me here at Pond Life Aquatics, and I hope you'll join me again next time for this Pond Life.